Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We have a panel discussion ahead of us. I am Adina, and I will be your host tonight. I am from a company that is online groceries, and we're Koshik Cezet. And that's about it, about me. But mostly we're here because of the speakers. So I will ask the speakers to please introduce themselves, and we will start here with Josef.
Hi, my name is Josef, and I am AI project manager and lecturer. I am currently employed at Česká spořitelna, where my main responsibility is AI governance. That means I'm making sure that we are in compliance with all security and regulatory areas and concerns. I was also for quite a lot of time AI project manager responsible really for the AI project that I was making, the AI chatbots, POCs, or I was implementing agentic platforms into the critical processes in the financial markets. So I have the experience from both of the worlds, from the regulatory part and from the actual part when I done something with my hands.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leonidas. I usually go by Leo. I work at MSD, the pharmaceutical company, and there I lead a team of engineers and data scientists where we use AI methods to develop new pharmaceuticals for animals. Just a clarification, I'm here representing myself, and none of the things I say are for the company.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam. I'm a product designer here at Muse. I'm in the users team where I work on everything related to user access, permissions, security, and all of those things. So not AI directly, but I use AI a lot in my work.
Beautiful. That reminds me, I didn't say I'm also a designer. Sorry. Okay, so let's go to the practical info. We will have a discussion for around an hour, something like that. Please, if you have a question, hold on to it in your mind. We will have last 30 minutes just for those. And the most, I would say, voted questions by the speakers here will get a piece of merch by Muse. And I must say, it's a pair of socks. Yay, I love socks. And I must say, I already have like third pair of those, and I love them. They're actually good, so it's worth it. So please think about your questions. We will have a space in the end for them. Practical info, restrooms right there behind me. If you have to go, you have to go. Timetable we covered. Networking. First, the digital one. I've been asked to tell you the Wi-Fi password. So it's Muse Guest, and then you put in the password Muse Hospitality. And M is capital, H is capital, it's all together. MEWS Hospitality all together. So I've covered that. And then the networking in real person, and that is going to be after the questions. But we will have, I would say, roughly 30 minutes for that if we will go by the schedule. And the doors of this office close at 9 p.m. So please don't hide anywhere. We're not going to be looking for you. And then the morning shift will find you and you will be set. So please don't do that. Also, for those of you who had friends who didn't get here because of the wait list, and then we didn't have some people show up, I'm so sorry. But we will have a recording. We do have microphones on us. We have a camera there. Thank you for the crew to making this happen. And we will put it, I think, on YouTube. Right, I think on YouTube. And now to you. We need to know a little bit more about you so we can focus this discussion a little bit better. And when we talked about what we're going to ask you in a circle, we really are interested if you are an individual contributor role or manager. So who is an individual contributor? Can you raise your hands? Oh, I see roughly maybe a half. Now let's do the other thing. The managers, please raise your hands. Okay, a little bit less than a half. Okay, and let's see the crowd. So design crowd. Nice. Product management crowd. Okay, engineering crowd. Oh, nice. And outside of these? Okay. Thank you. And now I will have a question, and it's really hard to quantify. Like, if I'm going to ask you, how much do you use AI? What are you going to tell me, right? So I came up with 2 answers that I will give you as an option, and one is enough, and the other one is not enough yet. So which crowd do you think you belong to if you were to judge? Do you use AI enough? Okay, and now not enough? Okay, we have some people hungry for AI. That's nice. Perfect. Okay, stay sharp because we might ask you a little bit more later. But now let's start the discussion. And just to start it, let's start at the point where we're now, and that's current state of AI. How big part of your work is connected to AI right now? And if yes, what it is? Anyone who's ready?
I think I will start because for me it's the easiest part as I am allocated 100% on artificial intelligence. I would say it's 100% on artificial intelligence because there is so many people like you who are hungry for artificial intelligence, want to do some projects, want to use it in their life. And this is a tricky part because as designers, engineers, you see a new shiny AI application and you want to use it, which is completely all right when we are talking about your personal life. But when we are incorporated this into the corporations and the normal company life, it can be quite tricky because if you think about all the security reasons, there needs to be someone who will be the bad guys and tell you, no, you can't use it, you will use this instead, etc. So that's my job. And I know it may be unpopular with you because you see it as a bureaucracy and it's boring stuff, but it's really important not to hate us, but to embrace the reality that it's really important.
Leo is laughing, so do you want to follow up on that?
I'm laughing because I agree with you that compliance is not an opposition. It's something to work with, and security and all those things are essential. I'd like to add that from my perspective, also full-time AI, you could say. But what we do is we are on the other side of that coin. We try to make sure that it actually works, which is another interesting aspect because you have to figure out the edge cases and the situations where it doesn't work as advertised, and sometimes it's not even really clear that it doesn't work. So it's all about figuring out the performance of the systems as well. I think that's a really big important part of implementing AI in reality.
And Leo, how big part of your work is AI?
Everything, 100%. Depends. We have to talk about it with other people. Is that working with it? Of course it is, but yeah, it's the main topic.
Okay, how about you, Adam?
So in the sense of using AI on a day-to-day basis, I would say that over the past year or two, it has basically penetrated most of the tasks that I as a designer do on my day-to-day, and it's kind of become a part of all the stages of the design process, whether it's research and AI helping me with some initial synthesis, doing all the transcripts. I don't have to make any notes anymore, things like that, or even just prototyping where AI now enables me to create whole prototypes in code. And so it's things like that where it's become increasingly more present in day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. If you look at all this, what do you say are the biggest changes in your field that were caused by AI? If you're looking from current lenses, of course, we're looking from the lenses of today.
From my perspective, I see that in the product trio, the roles, especially the product management and design roles, are enabled to kind of shift right, downstream towards the execution with AI, especially with things like prototyping. A PM can whip up a prototype in Lovable. I can jump into Cursor and create real prototypes in code. And I think that's interesting because it kind of pushes us to be closer to the actual product. And it also brings us closer to engineers, and that collaboration is always vital. But at the same time, I find it interesting because what's valuable for our roles and for the future, I think, is the opposite, and having our strategic skills. So I see those like this push and pull where the AI tools are pushing us towards execution, but at the same time, to stay relevant, we have to sharpen our strategic skills, I would say. So for me, that's like a super interesting paradigm. Yeah.
I would maybe adapt to the strategic part, and now I'm talking with the head of the product manager and project manager, not the compliance guy. But I think when we are talking about the changes in our work and the craft of the project and product management, the two most visible changes are the democratization of the craft and the speed of the learning. I can see it a lot, especially when I am lecturing this project and product management, and I am working with people who never ever before experience this craft. And in 3 months period, when they are using artificial intelligence, I'm like, wow, because when we are lecturing these topics, they always have the case studies and they have to work like for 3 months on real AI projects and products. And I can see teams where they don't use AI enough when they put the hours in, but they are not using AI because they think they will do everything themselves and they will do only this part. And I can see afterwards, after 3 months, there are a lot of mistakes. There are things I can spot easily. I don't even have to try, and I can say, okay, this budget is not done properly, and this planning, you need more people. And there is a lot of these things because they don't have the experience. But when I see teams, when they put the hours in, of course, but they use heavily AI with it, the experience is much, much brighter, and they are suddenly more seasoned. Because when I look at the end product, I can see that I can barely spot any mistakes with my experience. I'm saying like, wow, because they are using not just in their product management role, the budgeting, the planning, and the mission and statements, etc. But they are also doing the generated AI videos. They are doing the mockups as the product designers would do. They can do so much things in 3 months. So, and it can be really a difference between if they use AI and don't. So we have to think about it when we are doing this in our real day-to-day works and lives, because if someone else will use the AI, he will be much better than us. And even younger junior positions can catch up to us quickly. So we really have to, as Adam mentioned, think about more skills we can learn, the strategic skills, etc.
I like to give I agree with you guys totally. I like to give you a little different perspective as well. I like to think about the difference between the speed up and doing the impossible. I think that's something that we focus very much on, doing things faster. But AI also in many ways enables things that you can't do before. And I think that's something that perhaps shows more in the stuff that we do at pharma. But it's something also that opens up completely unknown things from before, you know. It's one thing to be able to make videos if you're not a videographer for your presentation. Of course, that's very powerful. But you know, in the horizon, we have algorithms that can predict the weather in new ways. You know, it's a bit maybe too sci-fi, but you know, the stock market, all these kind of prediction things will change quite substantially by AI technology, I think. So, a little bit off topic, but pardon.
Adam, if you don't want to follow up on this, I have another question for you. And from your perspective, what do you think is the most important topic right now in AI? From the perspective of a designer or any other perspective you want to bring?
Interesting question. Let me think for a few seconds. I actually think it might be the speed that Leo mentioned, because with AI, I see my design process being condensed a lot, and basically the feedback loop, or the loop of the whole design process as you go through it can become much quicker. And I think there's also a big potential for engineers to hit much higher velocity. I don't know if that's been your experience or not. Maybe it'd be interesting to hear. But I actually read an article from Luke Wroblewski just this morning, who was arguing that traditionally design has always been ahead of engineering, and now it's becoming flipped almost, where engineers with AI can be so fast that design can hardly catch up with them. And so I think the topic of how the whole process can fundamentally change is super important to think about also in terms of the future, as we will discuss, I'm sure.
Just to tack on that, if I may, I think that you're touching on something quite interesting, I think. And in my experience, a really important part is the alignment with the people who are going to use it. Because I think we're at the situation where AI can do things really rapidly and you can build things really easily, but that doesn't mean that they're always useful. So I think tempering our velocity as well to ensure that what we are doing is relevant is really important. But you've all heard about studies showing, high failure rates on AI projects in corporations. And if you read those studies, what happens is that I think people run ahead a bit with this exciting technology. So aligning with, what we want to do and what we can do and what we should do is like an important balance there.
Yeah, I think I strongly agree with this. I think that the most important topic is to achieve the stability and enough maturity. Because although it's true that the speed of the innovation is just like wow, but we need to achieve the stability to actually implement it into our processes. And especially in corporations, we cannot change the models 3 times per week. We need to think strategically in the long term. And if you are trying to convince people from business that they should this AI application, you really need to put the stability and not tell them you will have to work on this every day. You need to tell them, okay, this is a major product and it will be basically the same for the next 1-2 years. I know it won't be the same, but it's something you can you can promise them, and they will feel much better about it because the predictability is something that normal employee wants.
Mm-hmm. So we slowly entered the good and bad, the contrasting. Maybe can we follow up on this? We talked about what is the most important and what is maybe not happening so easily, so well, but maybe we can follow up with challenges, frustrations, or maybe something that surprised you how well it went with AI. Anything that comes to mind?
I probably have like very practical frustrations with AI. When I'm using tools like Claude, I run into its limits with context windows and managing context in general. That's been a big frustration of mine, basically having to, when you run into the limit of one conversation, having to start another one, and then you have to transfer all the context so that Claude can give you reasonable outputs. I think some tools manage it better than others. I've noticed that Cursor, for example, does this very elegant thing where when you basically fill up the context window, it summarizes it up until that point and then use it to basically continue the same conversation. So I think some tools have begun to solve it, but overall the context management has been a challenge. Also because due to governance and some guardrails that we have at Muse and how we should use AI, I can't share everything with Claude freely. There are obviously things, especially like personal information and things like that we can't share. And therefore, managing the context is always a challenge if you want good outputs. Sorry.
I think from the product management perspective, my biggest challenge is not with the technology itself, but the business processes that it incorporates. I mean this especially when we are talking about the speed. When the management wants, hey, do me a roadmap for next year, do me the business case, and the business case should be counted for next 3, 5, and 10 years. It's really hard, and especially at the beginnings. And when I was working in the waterfall organization, and when I was doing business case for this chatbot, I was doing business case also for the OPEX costs that are for the maintenance and for the running of the ChatGPT in the next 5 years. And when I finally done the business case, it was like for the 3 years, and I waited 3 months. Then every committee get the approval on it, the investment committee, the board committee, and etc. The new model came up, and it was like 70% cheaper. And I was like, okay, this is great, but what should I do with the business case? And there is so many things around it, especially when you are in a regulated industry and you have to do non-financial risk decision process and you have to have all the information and facts beforehand. And when the speed of the artificial intelligence is so fast that every 2 months, 3 months is something different, it's really hard to plan ahead.
I'll echo that. Actually, I think the speed of kind of innovation is hard to keep up with, and it's also, in my opinion, important to test things. So then you slow down, not because the committees are always slow, but also because you need some time to benchmark and to, validate that the outputs are correct. And I think that's, it's exciting / exhausting, I think, as a field. Yeah.
So it's like a speed up for everything, but you also have to have the reflexes.
Totally.
Yeah. So that brings me to a question. How often do you have to reconsider what to offload to AI, what to use AI for? Because it's not about if you're going to ask yourself the question, now it's about how often.
I would actually challenge the word offload. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. Meaning that I try to never completely delegate something to AI, because I have built this sort of distrust, hopefully a healthy distrust in what it outputs. Because as we know, AI hallucinates often, and its accuracy is in many cases wildly off. Can be. So even though I try to use AI in most of my tasks, I always try to make sure that I verify the outputs that it does. And I do sometimes run into things where I just see that the AI cannot do it. Like, I'll give you a silly example, but recently we had performance reviews at Muse, and I tried to use it's called Glean. It's a tool that's plugged into our Slack, Confluence, and all the systems. And some people have built agents in Glean that kind of tell you all the things that you've done, and you can kind of use it for self-evaluation. And when I asked Glean what I did, it told me things I haven't done yet. Like, if I had done all the things it said, it would be like superhuman. And so one has to be pretty careful with AI being overconfident. So that's why I also, even though I try to use it for most of my tasks, I try to kind of have that healthy distrust in the outputs, like always verified, basically.
It's a very good approach, I think. Instead of sending it to the review like that. Yeah, but if we change the word offload and we just say implement AI or start using AI, how often is enough to look at the workload? Or do you have any framework about how you're thinking about it? When to invite AI in and when to not do that? No framework.
I think we should implement the AI first or AI native approach, that in every possible way when we can use the AI, we should do the AI if we want. I think we should question every process we do. I know that some processes we love them, so we don't use AI on that. But there are many processes in our daily life which we can easily automate it when we are talking about the personal productivity, and you can use the copilot agents, etc., which really can move your workflow ahead. So I would recommend that really try to look at your calendar and pick the most boring and mundane tasks and try to automate them.
The tools we use are a little bit different, so we have to think about them a little different. So the framework that we have is that we're really trying to break things and then, really confirm that the outputs are what you expect them to be. Kind of when you fail at breaking them, that's when you have some level of trust that they perform as advertised. Kind of that's when we bring them in. And I would also like to take it back to the human factor. We really tried to identify opportunities where the tools are useful. And I think that's probably the most important thing, almost more so than the algorithm per se. There's so many algorithms to do things. New things come out all the time. And I think the difficulty is not the algorithm. I mean, of course it's difficult, and of course it's important that it's accurate, but I think the difficulty is finding where to put it and ensuring that even the person you're talking about has realized themselves the problem it will solve, because really good explanations and really accurate communication is essential, because teasing out from your stakeholder what they need is key, I think, and easily misdone as well. It happens all the time, honestly. But, yeah.
So, how do you keep yourself up to date with what's possible? Like we just mentioned, that everything is so fast. So, how to keep yourself up to date in this world?
I'm going to be really boring. LinkedIn.
Wow.
Myself, I just like to try new tools. So whenever there's something new, I like jump on it and play with it and experiment with it. Like, out of all the vibe coding tools, I've experimented with Bolt, Lovable, Figma Make. That one was the worst of all. Cursor most recently. So I just like to play with the tools and see what they allow me to do and what are the limitations between them, basically, and constantly trying to assess what makes sense to keep long term, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I can elaborate a bit after hearing you. You reminded me. I think what we do as well is that we discuss a lot about the tools as well. We have discussion clubs where we read papers together and then figure out, do we believe it? Do we trust it? Do we think it'll work as advertised? And that's kind of a good way to keep up to date, of course. Read the documentation and the papers underlying the methods. And that's something that takes a lot of time. AI can help you, but it's still very, very time consuming. So, and quite fun. I enjoy that, of course.
That's very great. And now let's see. We have some new tool we want to try, and first we kind of try it on something that cannot hurt any data or can really, we just invested the time that we can into it. But then when we say, okay, this is good enough, we're going to implement it, then the security comes, right? So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So how do you ensure that the usage of AI in your company is secure? And I know, Adam, you mentioned that you have some guidelines here in Muse, so maybe we can start with that and then go deeper.
Yeah, like in essence, I don't carry them all in my head. I have to kind of remind myself what those are. The most important bits are not sharing any customer information in tools like Claude. The tool Glean that I mentioned is something that's been cleared internally as something that we can use pretty freely because we have all the systems connected to it, and it sort of has the enterprise grade security, as I'm assuming, that's needed to protect all the data. So yeah, there are some guardrails in terms of which tools you can use for what, essentially. Yeah.
Maybe here I will ask the audience, do you in your company have any AI tools that are internally okayed? I see some hands. Yeah? Okay, good. Awesome. And some of you who are using AI like a cowboy, just you're filtering your data and using it for help sometimes. Some other tools? I certainly do that. Okay, good. So let's follow up on the security. Leo, I will ask you, because you work in pharma. That's pretty high standard for security. How
absolutely.
Can you elaborate on how you deal with that?
We have vetted tools, of course, that are implemented internally. Security is also something that we actively have to maintain all the time. We don't, willy-nilly install things. We have very, very structured processes to ingest models and to benchmark things. So I think it's something that should be second nature. In terms of, the difficulty is how do you keep on innovating, of course, as well, because you see this exciting new thing and you want to try it. I think there you have to be, of course, careful. But I kind of have it as a personal rule that anything I copy from the internet, I can use on the internet. If it's available on the internet, then it's obviously available for anyone to put anywhere. So it's kind of a mental switch I have in my head that, okay, I'm going to try something that's available on Hugging Face or whatever, and then I can use things from the public internet, and nothing comes out of the local machine, basically. But that's just a detail, I think. In the big picture, it's all about, in a way, like you mentioned, we shouldn't view security, compliance, all these aspects, we shouldn't view them as adversarial. They are an essential part of a modern organization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But when I follow up on this, is this any different from other engineering practices in the past, or are just AI models something on top that you have to be using the same approaches to? Is there any difference, in your opinion?
I mean, what are the differences? That there are more unknowns, and there are more players, and the space is moving faster. But in principle, it's the same stuff. And the same problems apply. Supply chain attacks on the code, and someone uploading malicious things, you carelessly downloading something. So it's common sense, but at the same time, you need to be vigilant, I think, all the time. So it's different and different and not at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bailing out on the answer.
I would maybe disagree with this because there are actually a lot of differences when you are using classical third-party software and when you are using the artificial intelligence models. Because if you think about it, when you use an engineering software application, it's usually built in here in Czech Republic, European Union, or let's say from the vendor you are using. And the data are there, and his people are working on it, and it's like pretty predictable, deterministic thing. But when you are using the same software and the vendor says, okay, I will put the artificial intelligence there, and I will use this AVA's model or something, I don't know, some other model, and I will use it directly from the OpenAI. You don't know where the data are going, because a lot of times in these instances, the data and the models are run in the United States, meaning outside of the European Union. And as you should know, the data protection in European Union is much higher. So you should be always careful about this, the data leakage into another countries. There is also the difference when you don't have this, when you don't have this in your license agreements, there is high probability that the models will be learning on your data. Of course, when you are using your artificial intelligence on Azure, you are pretty sure nobody will use it for the learning. But when the vendor is using it for something, you don't know anything about it. And also there is this approach when they are not, for example, the OpenAI and GTP, when they don't use it GPT on their Azure, or they are providing it, or they are using it as a service from the OpenAI, there are different laws applied to this, because, for example, every conversation in OpenAI is logged and can be, for example, for the federal US court used, and there are many other instances. I will not bore you with these details, but you need to be aware that are many differences in using third-party software which you buy from your credit card, and when you are using actually the artificial intelligence there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So make sure you know where the data flows.
That's right.
Okay. Do we want to add on security, or do we want to add anything to the topic of security?
No, I agree. Of course, I was thinking in the context of company where you have regulated systems. All those are, I assume, and I'm pretty sure they are. The data is contained where it should be contained. I was thinking more in the development aspect, but of course,
yeah. I would maybe add one thing to which Adam said. He said, "Don't put client data in this," and I would like to say, "Don't put any internal data in it. Don't put any proprietary information in it, because you don't know where it's going." So it's small difference, but it's kind of important.
Thank you for adding that. I have one specific question for Adam. I haven't tried it myself yet, that you can use AI to give you like an idea of what the user would do. Did you ever use that in this way? Did you ever get like a feedback by like user testing on AI?
Do you mean like testing your idea and asking AI, like you would a real user, or?
When you would do a moderated test, just doing that on an AI.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think that's rubbish, to be honest. Although I would say that when you have the AI connected to your data, I can imagine that being useful. I haven't tried it yet. It's an intriguing idea. So, for example, we have our personas living in Confluence connected to Glean, and we have an agent where you can basically ask about a certain persona, and it pulls the answer up based on the data of those personas.
Wow.
So I sometimes use that as sort of a shortcut to not necessarily replace talking to users, but maybe focus the discussion. So if I have some questions in mind, I kind of might run it through this first, and it might give me some initial insights that I didn't know about the persona itself. And I can use those to refine the questions when I actually go and talk to users. So in that sense, I've used that, but I haven't used it for actual testing or anything like that yet.
All right. Do you use AI in any way like this, where you let it give you feedback but pretend to be something specific?
I can add that while I don't talk to it as a user, I do try to converse with AI a lot to reason through problems. So I use it as a thinking partner. I try to describe my ideas to it. I try to describe the challenges I'm trying to solve. And I'm basically asking it to, is there anything I'm missing? Can you challenge this from that perspective or that perspective? Things like that to kind of help me think about the solutions that I'm trying to come up with for a certain problem. So I'm basically using it as a thinking partner. Yeah.
I see a lot of nods here. Do you also nod? Do you use it the same way? I see a lot of nods. I do it too. Okay. I have a question for Leo. Now let's do onboarding teams. Up, down, sideways, however you want to cover this. Is it how to do it? Like, what is your experience about onboarding teams to AI?
That's an interesting and broad question. I think we have to think about what is it that we need to know about AI. Do you need to understand hardware to know AI? Do you need to understand the algorithm's underlying functions? Do you need to understand how the algorithm performs? And I think you really have to tailor it. I think it depends on who you are addressing and who you want to do what with this information. Someone who's more senior might need to have other specific skills, and making sure that everyone has the ability to continue learning on their own, I think, is a key aspect, because you cannot onboard someone on everything that they need to know. So giving tools and knowledge to people for further learning is really what we need. Kind of tailored, maybe not personalized, but at least to a group level, I think is something quite smart to do if you're onboarding people on AI tools in general.
So based on the audience, then you go to the detail that is necessary in order for them to get what they need out of it.
I wouldn't say detail that's necessary. I would say the topic that is necessary. If we're talking about people who need to know how networks work, AI applies there. So understanding more about hardware helps you make decisions about that. But knowing about hardware will not be necessary for everyone. And I'm thinking about AI here in the broadest sense, right? Data collection from our hardware systems matters. How we record things matter. And if we're going to become AI native, we need to think about how we record the data to use it in the future. All these aspects, they're coming together, because it's easy to think, oh, you need to know how to prompt, but that's just the top layer if you're going to be successful in the long term. Thinking about how you collect data, thinking about how you store data, all these things matter for moving forward with an AI and digitalization.
I remember, Joseph, that you said something about 3 months trying 3 months, team trying AI for 3 months. Is that true, or am I misremembering something? Because is that a part of onboarding, or is it not?
No. When I mentioned these 3 months courses, I was talking about lecturing at nonprofit organization Chiquitas. I recommend everyone, or ladies, to check it out because there are great courses there. A little bit of promo. But to get to your question about the onboarding of people, if we talk about it in the broader sense, I would recommend do this centrally. Of course, you need every team has a specific know-how, and you need to get through it with them. But when we are talking about artificial intelligence, there is a lot of common areas, a lot of common things, and there are some favorite frameworks or platforms that you should use at your organization. So you should do it centrally. You should set up at least some communities. It can be IT communities, designers communities, or for everyone communities for artificial intelligence. And you should put the propaganda, the promo through them. You should tell them what's the artificial intelligence, so they have the broad knowledge. But you really should tell them, okay, we have this platform here. We have this Copilot, and you can use it, Copilot for chat and Copilot paid licenses, and you can use it like this. And you should really work with your people and culture department or HR department or learning department and prepare something like this, because every team will have same issues. And if you don't do it centrally, every manager will be fed up. You won't get the certainty that every employee has the same amount of information, because, for example, somebody under Adam or you would know more information about it because you know a lot about AI and it's your favorite topic. But if you would be in different department, there can be some manager that doesn't care about it, so they don't share the information. So this would be my take: do it centrally and do it properly.
But how do you choose the tool? From what I understood, Adam, that you're testing the tools if you figure out there is one that you like, who do you go to? Like you're like, oh, management, I really like this. Not Figma, make the other thing. So, because I'm thinking like this is the top-down approach, but how about the bottom-up?
Right. So from my experience, I have to admit that in some cases, I have just gone rogue and just used the tool. Like, for example, Bolt. I just did a prototype in it. It didn't involve any proprietary data or anything like that, so I was free to do it. I, of course, checked the guidelines so that, to make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong. But I haven't hesitated to use a tool even before it's like officially procured, as long as it kind of falls within the guardrails. So I would just encourage people to try and do the same if they want to experiment with a tool, not necessarily wait until. Obviously, you can always go and ask your manager if it's okay to be safe. You might disagree with me, but that's been my experience, at least. Yeah.
So it was just that you used it and you didn't need this to be like vitally available, or didn't need like the company to adopt it. You just used it for yourself.
Yeah, at that point, with Bolt specifically, I was at a point in the initiative and design process where I needed to make a very elaborate prototype, and Figma just wouldn't cut it. And so instead of torturing myself and spending weeks on something that I knew I could do in one of these tools in days, I just went ahead and used it anyway, because I knew that the benefit would outweigh the risks, essentially.
How do we meet in the middle? How do we make sure that what we adopt top down is really what they need, what the people are going to use? How do we make sure that we equip everyone with enough knowledge they can actually speed up their own work?
I'm not sure I have an answer on that. I think it's, we're in the middle of the change, so all we can do is, read the tea leaves as good as we can. Unfortunately, that's we can't tell the future. So I don't know if you have a better answer than that.
I'm afraid I don't have better answer because I'm always hearing from people around me that the processes are slow and that we are slowing everything down, which is unfortunately true. We have done a lot of things to accommodate your needs. For example, 1 year before, we had this questionnaire with 100 questions. When we ask a lot of security architecture details, so we are safe. Now we have only 28 questions, which is much better. But still, people are coming to me and to us and saying, why it's so slow? Why there is so many questions? We want it shorter and shorter. So I think there just will be this always push and barrier between compliance and you guys because it's quite a different world. And I think the main problem is that compliance or legal or security speak different language than we speak because when you are saying about the functionalities, why you need it, they cannot comprehend it because they never use it. They then don't use hardly any applications. So it's really hard for them to imagine what you are talking about. And maybe in that sense, I would recommend try to be patient with them and try to really explain them what you are doing. Try to talk to them like they are 3 years old kids because they don't understand what Figma is and what artificial intelligence is. And you need really to bring it to closer to them so they don't feel threatened with this new technology and these fancy buzzwords, etc. So you should really understand it. And you should also understand it when legal wants something from you. It's not because they are bored and they want to poke you with a stick and ask you more and more. They're asking it because there are legitimate security and legal concerns, especially with the EU AI Act. It's like a lot of pages of lot of legal text, and there are quite a lot of penalties. You can get, I think, to up to 10% of your yearly turnaround. So it's quite a lot of money you are putting on the table, especially right now we have the regulators in the Czech Republic that are trying to watch you. So be careful and be patient and compassionate with them.
We are nearing the last section of our talk. I just wanted to remind you that if you have questions, please still hold on to them. We will get to them very soon. And now let's go to the airplane view and follow up on everything that we said and talk about actually the roles. Is the boundary between the roles now more blurry? And how did your skill shape change because of AI? How does cooperation look? How do you do handoffs if you need to? What is the change? What is the difference now? You can follow up on any part. This is more like a kickoff.
I can maybe talk about the collaboration and the handoff bit because this is something that I'm personally experimenting a lot with right now. I talked a lot about prototyping already, and quite recently I tried to talk to my engineers about this and basically using a coded prototype as part of the design handoff essentially. And what I learned is that the prototype that Cursor coded, I didn't, it has pros and cons. Basically, the code isn't really usable to build off of it, so it can't be used in the sense of here is this piece of code and then you can develop it further. However, there is logic baked into it that is very useful for engineers to use and actually build production-ready code around. Using that is also forcing me to think about that logic, and that's very often, part of the handoff and the collaboration where like crucial details are missed and edge cases are missed and things like that, and it leads to a lot of back and forth between design and engineers. And being closer to the code actually enables me to think about it more thoroughly. So I found that actually useful. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the prototype being the way how you actually communicate logic better and get into further details. I can agree with that.
again, a bit of a outside perspective. So what we try to do is that we try to put tools in the hands of scientists to do experiments. So I welcome the kind of merging you were describing. The more they can do without us, the faster we all will be, and the more stuff will get done, and the more things we can create. So I think like these modern tools are indeed opening up the door to democratize tools and to put them in the hands of everyone. I think the flip side is, we touched it a little bit already, again, the upskilling. Just because you have the tools doesn't mean that you're effective with them. So like you were saying as well, it's you're having an implicit upskilling as you're using the tools. And I think kind of that's one way to get there. And another way to get there is as well to coordinate both the upskilling with the tools you're making as well. I think that's an important part.
Mm-hmm.
I would add on to that, because I completely agree with both of you guys. It was great points. I would maybe just think about it like, it's great that the lines are more blurry and that you can do more things, but it should be up to the point. I mean, the fact that you can do it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do it. And especially with the vibe coding, many people have I would say, they think they can do it. They don't need product managers because they can do the mission statement itself. And the product managers are saying, we don't need designers because we can vibe code it, etc. There are a lot of controversial topics like this, especially with the hashtags product management is dead and things like that. I would be really careful about it. And of course, it's great. You can use it. It's democratized and it will empower you, but up to the point.
I would add to this also, I've read this very thought-provoking article from one of the design leaders at Intercom who was saying that designers will eventually own front-end completely. And I have a very hard time imagining that happening anytime soon, and at least in the next several years, because the front-end code I've seen at least, and I've tried to be very, very close to initiatives that kind of push designers to work with code more. I can't imagine designers kind of replacing front-end engineers at all, even despite the advances in like vibe coding and tools like Cursor. So even though the roles are blurry, I think I've also read this idea that some companies are trying to make the individual the unit of excellence. And I think it's still very much the team that should be the unit of excellence and not an individual.
Yeah.
Just to add one small comment, the fact that OpenAI is still hiring engineers says everything, right?
This is perfect. Leo, for you, I've read an article today that was an opinion piece by a senior software developer. And it was basically a thought process of how our role is changing from someone who is doing the code itself to someone who also needs to make sure that anybody who vibe codes doesn't break our ecosystem, code base, everything. What do you say to this? Do you think about these things?
Yeah, tough nut to crack. I think it's about kind of communication. How do you handle people's efforts? Like you're saying, a designer who's coded something. It's a balance of encouragement and discussion around what's valuable to spend your time on. I think I don't know if I dare to say much more than that. But, yeah.
So kind of like setting it up in a way that there can be like both of these worlds can be supported, but the engineering still stands.
I think the danger we're having is that we're kind of we're making it like iPadified, that things become too easy, click, click, click. And that's great, but the fact that a child can use an iPad is a testament of how hard it is. You can't do advanced things, and you can't abstract away everything. So I think there's a balance between communicating limitations so that people understand the limitations and empowering people. And I'm not saying you shouldn't let people do things, obviously, but I think it's all about communicating the difficulties. You've obviously figured it out, and you seem to be very aware of it. I don't know how often that is the case, and I'm not saying that it happens often at my company or news or whatever, but it's I think upskilling is a key word. I'm gonna tap out on that.
Josef is nodding. I'm not sure if it's if you want to add anything. No. Okay. Now it's the time. I hope you held it. The questions. Do we have a hand? Yeah, we do. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for your talk. I just wanted to ask, it was a little bit touched during the conversation, but what tool was the most impactful or mind-blowing for you recently? I understand in your work, maybe it's a little bit restricted, but for your side projects or something like that, what tool it is? What blew your mind?
I can personally say Cursor because it enabled me to actually push code to production last week. As a designer, I did my very first PR, and it was very exciting because it was wholly enabled by the tool itself. I probably wouldn't be able to do it without it. So that's definitely the most exciting tool for me at the moment.
Hi. I'd like to ask the question about the tick boxes that you need to fulfill when you, like for the AI project, proof of concept, to have a green light, like in each of the companies. Yeah. So in Česká spořitelna, you said you had 100 questions. Now you have 28. I would be curious, like, to see what are those, and like just in few words to summarize what it should be there for this proof of concept AI project to be approved. And one more thing, you said your compliance guys, that you need to explain to them, to educate them and so on, to sell it to them. But what is their motivation to approve them at all? If you don't have any metrics on innovation, then if I would be compliance guy, like scared, lazy, I don't know, I would disapprove each project, and that's it. I would be safe. Compliance won't be broken. Thank you.
Can I answer the compliance question? I think if you're failing at communicating why you need the thing you need, then it's your fault. You really need to successfully communicate the value to your stakeholder and your counterpart in compliance for getting it through. So I would say it's again, I don't like to think about it as an adversarial relationship of fighting and of arguing. It's us together to do something interesting, something cool, and something valuable, rather than, hey, you are stopping me. Sorry, you are stopping me from doing, from truly bringing value. So I would say I try to change my own mindset and how I tackle these kind of questions. I try to show, when I have these type of discussions, I try to show what we do and how it's valuable. And I find that when you really explain why it matters, then it's not hard to find a solution. If I, on the other hand, show up and say, hey, I really need this, can we get this over and done with? Obviously, you're not going to have a good time. None of us are going to have a good time in that kind of discussion. So, spending time to really communicate the value of what you do and the context, I think that's my personal strategy. And then about the tick boxes as well, while I have the mic. We don't have a tick box like that, but my, again, personal philosophy is that I don't like the word proof of concept, because there you're setting out to prove that something works. And then you have the mindset that you will show that it works. And you might miss, implicitly, because you're just focused on the value, you might miss the things that are actually hard to do. Because in a POC, you kind of do the easy things that are visible. So I like to think of it the other way around. I like to say that, hey, let's figure out in what way this thing will fail. And let's say it out loud. And then if within 3 months, within and it's not about 3 months, 90 days. It's about the approximate, right? If we are unable to tick that off and say, hey, this is safe, then we don't continue. And I think that's how you kill a project. And it goes back to we should celebrate killing projects. Many people say this, but we don't really internalize it. Stopping a project means that you have the time to do something else. And if it's not something good to do, that's not something good to do. So I think, changing our mindsets a little bit about how we interact with both people and goals, I think is my 2 cents.
It was mainly for me, but it was just beautifully said. I don't want to speak after you. No, when we are talking about POC, we don't have 28 questions, but only 11 questions. But I think it's important to be said that from the compliance point of view, doesn't matter if you are doing POC development or you are in production, because every time you are in violation of regulation, it doesn't matter if a regulator will come to you or the state commission will come to you and you will say, okay, we leak this many of customer data, but it was only POC. They will not be glad, and they definitely won't say, okay, it's all right. So you need to put this mindset, whatever you do, it should be in compliance with the regulation. But it's also true when you are doing proof of concept, you don't have to be that hard on the security and infrastructure part, because you don't know many of these things. So when you are doing proof of concept, you should really focus how you are in compliance with the GDPR and EU AI Act, that your data are all right, and that, for example, the transparency regulations are set. And you will do this, and after several months or weeks, when you are going into production or into development, you will check another boxes and you will say, okay, we will go through the security and operational risk, and we will go into the next areas. So just there is no difference between POC development or in production. But as I mentioned, you should really be careful in early stages about the EU AI Act. That means you have to know right away if you are in low risk category or in you are high risk category, or you are doing something prohibited, because it doesn't. There is no reason to do POC if you are doing something prohibited and you cannot do it in the first place. So you should check this box. You should also check the boxes. Okay, for example, user is interacting with this chatbot or it is generating some messages. You should really put the disclaimer there. Okay, you are talking with the virtual assistants, so everybody knows you are not talking with the real human. And there are several things like these. And I think if you ask your legal guys, they will tell you it's not that hard, and you are good to go. I know it can sound like too many questions, but if you really sit down to it, you can do it in 20, 30 minutes. You send it up and you are all right. And I think it's better to spend these 30 minutes than explaining something to the, I don't know, GDPR guys why you leak that data or something like that. Yeah, exactly. But this is not a legal advice.
And I will add my little few cents. In Košík, we're very happy to still be a small team. So it really means you go to the AI guy and you ask them, hey, I want to do this. It would allow me this and that. I would save this many days every week. How about we do something about it? And this person then helps you find the proper tool that maybe is already in the suite and we're fine and everything is checked, or you might find out that you need something specific and then they're very happy to help you. Sometimes they might say, okay, we need to look into this and maybe involve legal, but mostly it is about discussing what do you want to do and then having the people. We have a great architecture AI person in the company, head of the team, and he's been a lot of help. And for example, in my team, we're using Ernest, who is the UX copywriter and has access to the database of our copy guidelines. And then he helps everyone on the whole product team to write the right copy, because they can just paste a screenshot in and it just says, okay, this I would change from this to that because of this guideline. So this is something that cannot leak anything if you don't do screenshot of course, data that you shouldn't. But this is something harmless that actually saves money, and we got help immediately. And we tried 3 different tools to do this, and we ended up with OpenAI in the end in the business account. Yeah. Any other? Sorry, did we answer your question? Perfect. Do we have more questions? Right there.
Hello, thank you for your discussion. My question is, do you believe everything what AI says, and do you verify like somehow if it's true?
I already mentioned today I try not to trust it too much. Like for example, when I talked about the use case of AI synthesizing some insights from research, whenever I try to verify it, I try to ask it based on which interview, based on which transcript, based on which quote are you basing this? How many of these are you basing it on? You know, is it all of them? Is it some of them? Can you point me to specific ones? So I basically try to get to the source of what the AI is basing it on to verify whether that's true.
Yeah. I think I think it's a bigger question, right? It's intoxicating how well these things write. So it's easy to get fooled. I think I quite like chatting with a machine. The ChatGPT's voice model is fantastic, and there I think that's when your critical thinking goes down a little bit. Is my suspicion, because you're listening to it. So I think there's so many subtle ways that these machines affect how we interact with them. So I'm thinking about this because I was talking with it yesterday. I like to use it for refreshing my knowledge, like having a quiz. And it was one thing I knew it was totally wrong, and then kind of snaps you out because you've trusted it on some other things, right? So I think critical thinking is something that is essential. But so it was before, right? Not that it's exactly the same, but yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned critical thinking, because I've read several studies that actually show that using AI a lot degrades critical thinking abilities over time. And it's super paradoxical how the very thing you need to work well with AI is at the same time something AI itself makes worse, essentially.
I think it has a little bit to do with a human biology that we kind of offload tasks very easily. Like here, I know you're the compliance guy, although I answered your question. You're the designer guy, so I kind of like you forget those topics when you're learning things together. So then with AI, that's the same but different, right? I think that's what's going on. That our nature is functioning in a different way, basically, with AI. Hope that makes sense.
Hi, I would like to use the opportunity that we have the representatives of all the roles here and ask a practical question. How do you keep the context on the project so that like all the roles are working with the same context? Because we found out that everybody is like jumping on all these different tools. So something is in Notebook LM, something is in like MD file stored somewhere. How do you actually approach it so that like from the end-to-end process, as you start as a product manager until the engineering, that you are like building on this like and snowballing the knowledge and not losing it in different places?
So interestingly, your experience might be different, but if I think about all the tools, all the AI tools that we use, they're single player tools mostly. And there actually isn't much collaboration going on in the tools themselves. The collaboration typically happens over the outputs of them when we share them between each other. So as far as like managing context goes, it really is a single player thing right now. I would maybe love to hear a perspective of someone who uses a tool where it's actually multiplayer, whether that's anyone on the panel or you or anyone else. That would be interesting.
I think this is question that predates the AI technology, because this was always in project and product teams that everyone had the information in somewhere else, for example, on their local drive in their Word, and they didn't share it, or their shared version 25, but the final version was 28, etc. So I think this is not question about technology, but about question how your project or product manager can enforce and set rules and standard. For example, you should start with the project or the product development with clear kickoff meeting where you say, okay, this Confluence will be the main wiki, and you will put there all technological details, and this will be the loop, or I don't know, OneNote or Notion or everything else when you will put the meeting minutes, and you will put it there. And on every status, you have to set the rules, you have to control the rules and enforce it. For example, when someone will use it, you show you something, okay, hey, I have done this in this app, you will tell them, okay, but we don't have it in our documentation, then you should do it. And it's the same as you would do the normal development. I guess you guys from the engineering, you don't like the technological documentation and things like this, and the product manager has to be strict with it. They had to say from the beginning, you need to do the technical documentation, because it's the part of the delivery, and there cannot be delivery without the technological documentation. And I think same principle applies when they are using the artificial intelligence. Someone will tell you, okay, I love to use the Notion AI and I want to use it there, and someone will tell you something different, but you have to be strict and tell them, okay, I know for your personal workflow is better, but we are working as a team and you should respect the team rules. Or if there is such a strong desire, you should ask it beforehand and maybe do some votes about it. And you can say, if you are not working, of course, in corporation, okay, if majority of you wants to use this software because of the AI feature, we will use it, but we will use only this one. So it's about the communication, I would say.
I will have a question back so I can understand better. How do you mean the context? Or maybe what is the example of that?
So the example would be, so some companies would start with as a PM, writes the PRD. They write it to an MD file, which actually lives in some in some Git repository, so that like when the designer is then like using the context in their design tools, they are using the same MD file and the same kind of initial context document as then would the engineer once they start developing it and once they use it as a contexting cursor. And like these examples of actually like enriching the initial like project knowledge in a single place, I think the Confluence example is actually a good one. But what I was looking for is if you have like any other like similar examples how AI is helping you with the communication.
Now that you gave us more details, maybe I will go back a little bit to the basics, because I think it really comes up, or at least in our company, things are pretty much not set in stone yet. So it really is depending on who is at the kickoff. And I think this really depends on where the project is the heaviest. Sometimes we're working on admin software that has very little design, very much engineering, and then the engineer is the one who is making sure we have all the data in one space. And sometimes it is very design heavy and we're first, and these other teams are not really on board yet. They're like just one representative is on board, but everybody else is still doing something else. And in that case, that would be Figma. But I don't think we had like assets that we would say like this PRD, MD, So that is a great idea, which we're going to totally implement. But maybe we can also ask the audience, unless you guys want to jump in right now. Question to the audience. Yeah, there is a hand. Do you use anything that keeps you aligned? How does AI help you being aligned, or maybe some asset that you use in the beginning?
I'm not using it, but we are developing the kind of this thing that we're exploring this thing. where you would actually so I think the challenge here is, and why, for example, I am, and I don't know, hundreds of other people are not using the documentation properly and not writing it, not updating it, even if you tell them to, just like kids, because it's not living. It's not living. You just put it there. It's one-side communication. Yeah? And so no one relies on the fact that it's living and it's up to date. So I'm not using it as a truth, like one source of truth. So why would I spend my time to prioritize this task to put there all the things I have to have it up to date? So at some point at each company, each wiki got kind of dead. Yeah, partially dead. So the idea we're exploring is that you would have the living knowledge base, where you would put all the necessary documentation, like documents, insights, meeting minutes, architectural decisions, and the knowledge base would have the strict rules on how to prevent, let's say, how to make it consistent. So, for example, if you have two architectural decisions on the same thing that contradict each other, it would tell you, hey, yeah, you're trying to insert something there, go and discuss with other guys, yeah, which one to put there. And so by, let's say, having the place and technology to have it stored properly and consistently and so on, to have a living documentation, and with the power of AI, but grounded with the let's say smart retrieval, I think this is the way to go, and it's huge pain, like for everyone, for each company.
I see. So coming soon. Thank you so much. Maybe I'm thinking about the example where you put an agent on your call and it updates your Jira for you. This is something I've really wanted to try. I think we're not using these things enough yet, but it's definitely something I want to try. The trouble is, if you're not using English, sometimes it gets funny and funky, especially if you're using abbreviations or you're using like slang words in Czech. It can come up with something that is really not what you were looking for. But I think this is something that could actually help. Something that listens where all the decisions are made, and then it kind of like does the documentation for you. Because I think we can all agree that documentation is the part that is really hard to do, and nobody kind of wants to do it. So yeah. Anybody wants to add anything? Yeah, we have a hand.
Oh, I wanted to ask the question.
Okay. So thank you. Let's move on.
So hello, thank you so much for the presentation. I think that AI can be a great tool in different aspects, whether it's research, prototyping, engineering, etc., etc. And my question is there a point where you would like to draw a line and say that in this area or this aspect, I really don't want to use AI, or I really shouldn't use AI? And if there is any point like this, what is it?
I think two aspects. First aspect is from the compliance point of view. When we are talking about things that are prohibited or high risk by EU AI Act, I would always be careful around those areas, and not just because of the legal point of view, but because they are there for a reason. For example, when you are putting artificial intelligence into the performance reviews or hiring processes and things like that that can influence real people and the decisions behind it, I would be really careful. I'm not saying don't do it, but be careful with it and have the audit loggings and know why the decisions are made, how they are made. And from the product management point of view, I would always think about the business case, because there is a lot of processes that can be automated. They are really ripe for automating because it's like a lot of manual work. But if you are talking about real processes and you want to put the agentic AI into that, you really should also think how many hours it will save versus how much it will cost. not in the direct expenses, but also the expenses of the time from the people who will do that. And I have seen a lot of these examples. And for example, people came to me and said, okay, I have this process, I have to do it manually, and I spend 4 or 6 hours a week on this. And from the first point of view, you can say, okay, it's a lot of time of this guy, it's something boring, mundane, and we should automate it. But if you think that the 4 hours of this guy, I don't know, cost of it can be few thousands or higher hundreds of Czech crowns, and the automation would cost higher thousands, hundreds of thousands of money, because you would have to buy a new software, you would have to develop the processes. You should really think about it. Where is the line? And I mentioned here that you should do the things AI first or AI native, which is true, but you should always think about the bottom line. Yeah, that's true. I'm always saying just hire two students part-time. They will do it and it will be much, much cheaper. That was a great point.
I would maybe add, like in general, I'd avoid or be wary of letting AI do any sort of decision making. Not explicitly, of course, but things like asking AI, should I do this, or which idea is the best, and things like that. I would be very cautious in that area, especially with knowing that AI isn't as accurate as we would like it to be. And that's where I would personally always draw the line. Like, AI is great for inputs and challenging my thinking and things like that. But as far as making the actual decision, I believe that it should always rest with a human.
Yeah, and I would also add the customer-facing AI processes. You should be always careful. I'm not saying don't do it, because there are great use cases, and we at Česká spořitelna do it a lot. For example, voice bots or Hey George, like the virtual assistants, and we can see it's really great. But you always have to think that you need to put prompt shields and other security aspects in place, so you are really safe from the prompt injections and other threats which are real, because there will be always someone bored or your competitor that will try it and will try to exploit it. So you need to be sure it's safe to use.
I will add 2 things from completely different point of view. One is, I wouldn't automate something that I love. Like, if I can do it, then it's not such a waste of. If it's not something that I would be like, oh, we just wasted that much. If I love it, I'm gonna continue doing it, maybe with assistance, but I'm just gonna enjoy the part of the process, because I need to keep having fun. And then second thing, there was a great talk on this conference, Černá AI in Ostrava, by a person who has like a design studio, and he said AI makes like not great, not terrible design. You have like something that is not so great, but it does it faster than you do. So maybe thinking about, what do you want this to be? Do you want it to be extraordinary? Do you want it to be different? Do you want it to not be like a process, something of process, and then you get the middle and it's kind of good, but it's not awesome? So that is another thing to look at, because it's just going to give you the average of averages, but sometimes you don't want it to be average, right? So maybe in that case, I wouldn't be going to AI, because I would be like, I actually want a human input here, because then I can get something extraordinary. Did we answer your question? Perfect. Thank you for the question. Okay, I think we have time for like 2, 3 more. 2? 1? 1 more? Okay, 1 more.
So my question is, from product management perspective, we mostly encourage developers to use AI for code extractions, code snippets. It eventually increases their development time, but in the long run, we always have quality issues and more bugs eventually. And how we should, as a product management, should somehow approach developers somehow to encourage them to use it, but also we need to ensure code quality. And is there any suggestion in this case from the experience?
I mean, I can't speak for code quality, but when you have someone like designers coming into code and trying to make any changes, I think at this stage, at least, especially if the designer doesn't have a lot of knowledge about code and engineering in general, the scope of the change should be as small as possible. It should ideally be limited to like visual tweaks or tiny changes. Like the thing that I contributed, I purposefully chose something where I intuited it could be small enough for the AI to handle it. I didn't try to tackle like a big functional change because I knew as soon as it started touching like multiple files or multiple domains, I would quickly get into trouble. Obviously, there should be processes in place that prevent me pushing something completely breaking into production. Code reviews exist for a reason, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, of course. So I think this is something that we're actually experimenting with. It's not something that we would roll out to the whole organization. And to be able to do that, we would need to make sure that designers are able to select things that they can actually tackle and not attempt something like too much and break stuff. Yeah.
In my company, there is a talk right now that if we want everybody to push a little bit better quality vibe coding, we should give them like a framework to work in. So I think there is an activity, I don't know how far it is right now, but definitely some people are already talking about how to create some sort of a boilerplate, how to create MCP server that will bring you up to speed and make sure that you ask the right people the right questions, or you do the right steps. Okay, now you need a branch, something happens and you have the branch so you can put it in there and the right people are notified. And maybe you can even ask the server and it's going to point you or give you direct answers from the documentation. So it's all about what is the goal, what is the scope. And I think if you want to encourage this, maybe for those POCs, smaller ones, maybe the company can also do something to encourage this and kind of also have the guides or guardrails. Okay, did we answer? Perfect. Okay, the last one now.
Yeah, so first things first, I want to thank the speakers on the panel. Thank you for the brilliant discussion and your ideas. Yeah, so the question is, when we are going from using the LLM models and AI for speeding up the process of prototyping, engineering, so on, to kind of generating some new stuff, maybe doing some research thing, how can we trust the output? And in a current setup, when taking into account the state-of-the-art models we have currently, do you see any kind of setup how to leave AI LLM models working on some stuff, and then you come and just take the result, not reviewing it or transferring that result to some kind of research, the team of researchers to validate the result. So, or we need to wait for some better AI, for some AGI maybe. So what's your opinion on that?
Right now, no. I will check everything.
I would say we're quite far from that. I read an interesting study where they asked an LLM to generate hypotheses, and then they had scientists evaluate how good they were. And interestingly enough, it generated interesting hypotheses, and it was like 1 out of 1,000. So, and this is scientists evaluating it. So I think the problem here is kind of the novelty outside of the training data, at least right now. So I think we're quite far from independent things, and it's unclear what we need to get to what you're describing. I don't think anyone knows. So I think it's becoming somewhat clear that scaling up LLMs is not the way to go, at least in my opinion. But I think we're check out the essay by I always can't pronounce the name, the CEO of Anthropic. He's got a great essay on how it's quasi-religious, many things around AI, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about these things. I think it's called The Loving Grace of Machines, even a quite dramatic title.
Wow. Okay, and I have one more thing to add here. Unless we're already out of time. We are out of time, so I'm not going to add anything, really. Thank you for the question. Thank you, audience, for coming in. It was awesome. Thank you for everyone who's looking at home, watching this, I don't know when, maybe sometime later. And thank you, speakers, for this amazing discussion. It was a privilege to be here. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I think we should do a big round of applause for everybody, including Muse.